All right, all right. Welcome to the Underground Sound, the podcast for your mom's ass. My name is The Sheep. I am the host of this show, and today we're talking with a very interesting guest. We're here with Jake Syreini, formerly known as Jake James, former rapper, current entrepreneur, and my personal favorite, current podcaster. We're going to talk all about the old days back when we used to rap together and how that all came about for him. We're going to talk about his business that he's running right now and how he's trying to get involved with his local community. And we're also going to be talking about the podcast business. Not really a business because I'm not getting paid for it, but you know what I'm saying. The podcast for your mom's ass meets sore joints and twitches. Jake Syreini, the sheep. It's going down, and this was a very fun conversation too. I gotta say, super cool guy, and this is one of my favorite interviews I've done because he just gets it. You know what I mean? Some people, when you talk to, everybody that I've been talking to is involved with the entertainment business in some way, so they all get it. But Jake, especially, he hosts his own podcast, so he understands how the conversation flow goes, how to give good answers, And I had the pleasure of being on his show when I was up in the UP most recently. So now he's on my show. And it's a great conversation. I want you to sit and listen to it, even if you have never heard of a Jake Syreini before. I need you to know. Maybe if you've never heard of Jake James before, I need you to know. This is an interesting conversation. It's going to be fun. Check it out. The podcast for your mom's ass. Underground Sound, baby. Check me out. Yeah, baby. What? Huh? Podcast, yeah. Jake James in the house. What now? Wait, it's still recording? Fuck! Alright, welcome to the Underground Sound, the podcast for your mom's ass. And I'm here with former rapper under the name Jake James, current entrepreneur, businessman, and most importantly to me, podcaster. I'm here with Jake Syreini. Jake, how are you doing, man?
Oh, man, I'm great, dude. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, returning the favor. I had a good time on your podcast and definitely wanted to get you on mine. And I think it's kind of fun to reverse roles a little bit, like being interviewed as opposed to interviewing people all the time. It's a different spin on things,
Yeah, I'm pretty exclusively on your side of the mic on this one. I interview a ton of people, and I don't have a whole lot of opportunities to come on this side. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be cool. I'll see what we can pull out of you and let the audience get to know you a little bit. We're connected. We go all the way back to the rap days and stuff. I want to talk all about that. I want to talk about what you're doing now.
Okay.
First things first, though, you just went to DC recently. How was that trip for you, man?
Oh, it was cool. It was cool. So, like, part of my business, I have a social media marketing company. I help businesses in Delta County plan and execute social media strategies.
What's the name of the business?
It's called Syreini & Company, just digital marketing agency here in Eski. Every once in a while, I get somebody that hits me up and just wants a cool video made about something. And the Honor Flight flies out of Escanaba twice a year. And if anyone doesn't know what the Honor Flight is, they take local veterans and they bring them to Washington, D.C., for one day, all expenses paid, and they get to see all of the major monuments and memorials in DC. And there's a lot of fanfare, and they make a big deal out of it. And I got to accompany them this time and take some pretty cool video, actually.
Wow, I didn't even know that they did that. So you were kind of just brought along or invited along to kind of document it and that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah. I'm really good at just positioning myself for opportunity, and this is just one of those key things where I sort of ran into it, and it came up on whether or not I wanted to go with, and I was like, well, yeah, absolutely want to go with, So, yeah, it was fun.
What was it like being in DC? Like, are you a political person much? I mean, is that any of that? How does that?
Okay, so first and foremost, I'm super into history. So early American history is like I'm a huge geek about that. It's one of my rare moments, like that. So the first part about being there was the history. All I could think about us all day was like, damn, like George Washington probably walked right here at some point, or Benjamin Franklin probably walked here. Like all day, that's all I could think about, and it was pretty awesome. But as far as politics, man, I've been on both sides of the line. When I was younger, I was very liberal. Then I got a little bit older, and I got very conservative. And then as this whole last couple of years played out, I just find myself kind of withdrawing from the whole thing, man. It's hard not to think the whole thing's a little bit silly with the way it's gone as of late. You know what I mean? So
it's a clown show nowadays, and it's divisive and negative, and
it's very they're very upfront about what it's become. They're not hiding how ridiculous it is. The more ridiculous, the more they push it these days. So it's hard to sort of take that serious in a way.
It's like politics are the entertainment for the news TV shows. It's like some sort of crazy reality show of some kind almost,
It's exactly what it is, man. It is. And the worst part is this, you ever feel like the dumbest people that you knew from high school have like the most political opinions these days, no matter what side they're on?
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. To be truthful, it gets annoying. Like, I'm kind of a political guy, and I did a lot of that during the election when everybody's talking about it, and you chime in and give your opinions, or at least, I did to a certain extent. But, once the election kind of cleared, it's like, it just starts to be too much. I don't like all that negative energy, and it's just constant bickering and hate back and forth.
Yeah, man. I mean, I lost one of my oldest friends this year over the election, over who he thought I might be voting for. And it was crazy. Like, it's like, you didn't even ask me, first of all. And literally, like, one of my oldest friends, and gone, just like that, over politics. And ever since, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, people are taking this whole thing, like, way too serious. And I understand it is serious, but at the same time, it's just like, people are stomping on each other.
Yeah, people take it to heart too much, and it's scary because you see the divide going on in the country, and I worry. We're not. It's not impossible that we see another civil war over this kind of stuff at some point.
I agree. I think about it all the time. I think people have an illusion that we're far more stable than we are, and this whole thing could crumble pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's happened before, and they always say, if you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it. But people don't ever think that can happen to them,
Right.
You kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit. Is it true that you are a Freemason?
A what?
A Freemason?
Yeah, it is true, actually.
How is that? How's the sacrifices and all that, running the globe and all that stuff?
Dude, to be perfectly honest, it's not as cool or crazy as it sounds. It's sort of it's a whole lot of old dudes, wearing silly jewels, saying the same thing every time. Like I said before, I'm very into early American history, and the early American history, as far as the founding fathers go, the revolution was planned at a Masonic lodge. And through some of the history readings I did, read the autobiographies of Ben Franklin and things like that. And I sort of made a connection with some of those founding fathers through this modern fraternity that's still here. And I investigated it a little bit, and here I am, you know.
Do you, I mean, just from your experience there, do you feel like there's an Illuminati thing going on with it, or do you think it's just like the nation's oldest Eagles club?
It's exactly the nation's oldest Eagle club. I mean, I can't claim to say like I know anything about anything because I've never done anything outside of the outside of the UP. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know what's going on, but as far as like my firsthand experience, like I've seen the secrets. I know what the secrets are, and they're pretty silly, to be honest with you. So like I don't know what's going on all the way at the top, but you know, who knows what's going on at the top of Coca-Cola? Right. Like, what are those guys doing? You know, that's sort of the way I think about it. I mean, you could take any major corporation in this country, and somebody's doing some evil shit. You know what I'm saying?
It's like asking the dude in the Coca-Cola bottling plant to what's going on up in the corporate offices. Like, I don't know, man. I just work here.
Yeah, it's exactly that. So, you know, it's cool at times. You know, I mean, it has its moments. You know, you do things at meetings that have been repeated since, you know, the 1600s that, you know, every Mason in America since day one of America, you know, has done. And some of them are pretty silly, but they're really adaptable to a lot of things we do. I mean, everything from, you know, the swearing in ceremonies in the military to the oaths policemen take to the rituals that go on in Eagles and Elks clubs, all the way to the Bloods and the Crips, all have connections to Masonic rituals and ties.
Yeah, that's crazy. And as a history buff, I mean, I can definitely see the allure to that. One of the other coolest things about you that I just love, and we, you know, me and you go back to the rapping days, and I do want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I want to get right into the podcasting too, because you're the only other person that I know that's on my level as far as, you know, not a famous. You're not Joe Rogan. I'm not Joe Rogan. But me and you are out here trying to do this podcast thing, and we're kind of like the two people. You know, I don't know anybody else that's really doing it or trying it yet at this stage. But how did you get into it, and what's kind of the theme of the podcast for you?
I think we're two of the very few who have gone all in on it. I think that's what separates us. I think we have a vision of what's possible through this whole thing because of our experience in music. And I got into podcasting pretty much the same way I got into rapping back in the day. Listened to a whole lot of podcasts, really liked it. Found myself learning things that I never thought I'd want to learn, or, you know, and I'm not talking about like school things. I'm talking about, you know, history and ways of thought. And I became fascinated by this new way to learn, and it's something you can do. I used to travel a lot for work, so I mean, I'd be in the car for 20 hours every week, and you had to kill that time somehow. And I used to listen to Howard Stern a lot on Sirius. I had satellite radio in my car, and Stern always bashes on podcasts. He actually hates them, and because at the time that was my first time I really got into, I guess, what you would call talk radio. I kind of looked down on podcasts for a while too, just because that's the only interaction I had with it.
Right.
And then I became aware of guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, obviously Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss. And I just took a chance one day bored in the car, and I listened to one podcast, and I haven't listened to music in my car since. Like, I seriously have listened to music in my car like 3 times in the last year.
Yeah, that's the same for me. It pretty much replaced music. And, you know, it seems like, you know, podcasting's been around a long time, but it still seems like it's something that is still kind of on the underground level. It's not, a lot of people that I'm friends with don't listen to podcasts. They're aware that they exist, but it's not really their thing. I don't know that they've even tried them. I still think that it's something that has room to grow and that is yet to hit its full potential of exposure. And it's really cool. It's like a rabbit hole. You know, I got into it early because I'm a wrestling fan, and
Sure. Yep.
there's tons of wrestling podcasts, and some of the earlier ones I started listening to those and was aware of them because of wrestling, and then it kind of became, well, what other podcasts are out there? You know, if they're talking about wrestling, what else are they talking about? So then you find the other ones that you're interested in, and it just, yeah, man, it's awesome. What inspired you to start your own, and what's your theme of your podcast?
My theme's kind of interesting. It's I guess I'll start from the beginning. When I was 10 years old, I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and a mild case of Tourette syndrome in the same year. Growing up with that, I wasn't, a dork or anything. I was fairly normal as far as, Uber kids go, but I was always embarrassed that I had these things going on. They were obvious, and the kids would tease you a little bit once in a while. So I compensated, for these things to make sure I wasn't an outcast. So I compensated by being the loud kid and the funny kid, and the seventh grader that would drink a whole bottle of Mountain Dew just to be hyper for the rest of the day. And because I did that, it molded my personality in a way that probably wouldn't have developed had I not been compensating for some of the things I was embarrassed about. So as I got older, I wasn't doing it to compensate anymore. It just became who I was. So I was able to have conversations with anybody and pick up conversations and meet new people all over the country and make friends at a moment's notice, just because I had spent my entire youth trying to do that, basically. So as I got older, especially these last few years, I feel like people around our age are going through this strange modern enlightenment right now. People are waking up to the ways of the world and what's going on in politics behind the scenes. And I mean, are you familiar with like what sugar is doing right now? I mean, it's crazy. Like sugar is killing us right now. We're not talking about it at all. But because of podcasts, I've become familiar with these things, and I'm learning about them, and I just got fascinated. So this last few years, I've been having podcast-like conversations with people in bars and restaurants, and then I meet in public, just asking them about their life and their story and what they do and how they got there and what the challenges were. And I was having a conversation about maybe a year ago with John Harris over at the Beaten Path in downtown Eski, and we were having a conversation about the disc golf community. And while I was talking to him, I could hear our conversation, and all I could think of was, this feels like a podcast. And I'm like, is this really how easy it is? You just talk to people and record it, and it turns out it's literally just how easy it is. You just talk to people about cool things and expand on them, and exactly what we're doing right now. So I'm like, okay, I really got into podcasts like a year ago. I'm having these conversations that I'm just fascinated by with these random people. And I'm like, why don't I just record them? I knew how to record. I knew how to edit because of my time in music. So I was already a pro at that. So I literally just spent, a few $100 on the right gear, and I got a new MacBook Pro. And I mean, what would have took me with no background months to learn how to do because of my background in music, I literally figured it out in 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, I started recording my first episode, and it's been on ever since, Yeah,
that's interesting. Mine was kind of the exact same story in a way. Me and Dusty, my partner Dusty, back in the Freedom Entertainment days, we used to ride around all the time and go on rides out in the country, to do miscellaneous things while we're riding. And one of the other things that we would do while we were riding would just be having these ridiculously deep conversations about something crazy. So we just one day got together and decided to record it instead of, we actually even thought about just taking it in the car with us, but he came over to my place, and we just sat down and recorded a conversation. We did 3. Those were the first installments of this podcast here. and
Okay.
up until before I moved, and then I just started doing more of an interview format. But same thing, just interesting conversations. We just decided to record it, and it became a podcast, and that's that.
It's amazing how organic it could all be,
Yeah.
It seems like the people that are doing it, that are all in on it and really trying to make something about it, it seems like it was relatively simple for a lot of us to start. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, with the hip-hop background, it makes things a little bit easier just from the production standpoint, just knowing how to edit audio, even generically, because podcast is a conversation, it's not a song that you can get real intricate and, all that stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, even just the fact that we're not shy because of all the shows we played in concerts in front of all these people, I don't feel myself getting embarrassed that these things are going out, I mean, don't get me wrong. The first one I put out, I hit upload, and then I'm thinking, oh crap, people are actually going to hear this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you get that little bit at the beginning, but it's a great thing. I absolutely love it. I recently started volunteering with the Escanaba High School. They started a podcast club this year. Matt Oney over there, he's one of the physics teachers, really into podcasts, listens to mine, and I've actually been volunteering over at the high school to help them start a podcast club for high schoolers, and we're about a month into it, and the kids love it.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it gives them something productive to do while they're in school as well. Yours is it's the Sword Joints and Twitches podcast, a play off of, like you said, with the early childhood touch of Tourette's and
yeah.
So that's a unique name for the show, and you're kind of just about the local community, correct? Or what's your specific aim with that show?
Honestly, the aim's just to talk to cool people about dope shit. You know what I mean? Honestly, that's what I'm going for.
So there's no real structure necessarily. It's just cool people.
No, not really.
Stuff.
And I don't really think there's gonna be, because there's so much structure and everything else I do in my life between
right.
my business and some of the other things I'm involved in, and I actually love to be able to meet people and be like, you're cool, come on my podcast. So I mean, I've had state reps, senators, county prosecutors, CEOs, homies I grew up with in elementary school. You've been on it, I've had whole bands on it in my office playing acoustic guitars and basses and drums, and I am really digging the fact that I could just meet cool people and be like, hey, come on my podcast, and let's just talk about something.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It's a good outlet for you. When you started back in the early beginning, what were the types of people that you were looking for to try to interview? Because there's one of the most interesting ones I thought was the one that you did with Phil Strom, who's a local prosecuting attorney in that area, and that's such an interesting conversation. I interview people that do independent entertainment, which you certainly fall into that category. Rappers, wrestlers, I do a lot of, but I want to do a lot of other cool stuff too, like I was, and Phil's one of those types of people with interesting jobs where you can really just kind of pick their brain. What was it like getting an interview like that? And especially because, I know Phil, I went to high school with Phil. We weren't friends, I don't know him, but, people like him and Andy, I kind of grew up with and know them just from being around them, and then just kind of seeing what they become and hearing their conversations. It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, those are two great examples of who I'm trying to reach, because both the interviews with Phil Strom and Andy Crispina had the same relative tone, and I'm trying to reach the kid in the UP and in small towns all over the country who say, it sucks, I can't believe my parents chose to raise me here, why do I have to live here, I live in this small town, it's boring, but I'm trying to tell people that it's like, in 2017, it doesn't matter where you live. You can literally do anything you want. You can just start doing it. And whether one person pays attention or 1 million people pay attention, it doesn't change the fact that all you have to do something is to do it. So my big thing is to just talk to awesome people who are doing just cool things that are from places like I'm from. It doesn't have to be the UP. It doesn't have to be Escanaba or Bessemer, my hometown. It's just that same type of person who feels like I felt lost growing up, like 16, like I feel like I'm meant for something great, you know? And I always thought that about myself, but I
Yeah.
thought that meant that I would end up in a skyscraper in Chicago
Yeah.
or New York somewhere. And as I get older and I'm becoming more aware of what the culture in 2017 is like, you know, it's just, we can literally do anything we want, which is how I started this podcast. I just did it, you know?
Speaking of just going out and just doing stuff, how does a young gentleman from Bessemer in the UP of Michigan get into rapping? And tell me about how that all started. And you went under the name of Jake James. Talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit too.
Well, Jake James is my real name. My full name is Jacob James Syreini. So when I was in college, I got a job at the local radio station over in Ironwood at 99.7 The Storm. And when I first got hired, they say, all right, you're going to be on the radio now. You got to come up with a radio name because, you know, you might get a stalker and you don't want them to know your real name. And I'm like, all right, cool, you know, whatever. So I couldn't think of anything. And they were like, yeah, a lot of people just use their first and middle name. And I'm like, done. Call me Jake James.
That easy.
Yeah, it's funny. I got called Jake James for the next 10 years because of that impulsive moment. You know, I could have been called Rex Ryan or something, you know, you know, but I just went with that, and you know, it's a nod. I was named after both my grandfathers, Jake Syreini and Jim Campolo, and so I was named Jake James, and I went with it. And when I got into hip hop, same thing. It's like, okay, you need a rap name, and I'm like, well, I got a radio name. I might as well use the same thing. So that's pretty interesting. I got into hip hop when I was 19, freestyling at parties, just shitting on my homies. You know what I mean? Just classic, just trying to say the meanest thing possible about your closest friends.
Like a roast rap, kind of?
Like a roast rap, yeah, like a roast battle. And we started doing that, and then MySpace was real hot at the time.
Yeah.
And remember you could do... what were they called? Where you could put like articles that you wrote at the top of your timeline, I guess you would say. I forgot exactly what it was called.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a thread. So you could post one thing on there, and then all of your friends could post on the same thread. So we would do these long form battles. Same thing, just crapping on each other. And then one would write a 16, and then the next one. And I mean, this went on for months and months. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and the guys I was doing it with they were all of her cousins. And she went out of town for something for school, and while she was out of town, all of her cousins were over at my apartment, and we were like, man, we've been doing all these raps. I got this computer right here. And we used the most basic Dell computer with the computer microphone when they used to come with those little skinny ones that came on the stand, you know. I mean, we started recording music on that setup, and we just did it in my apartment at the kitchen table, while the girls were out of town, and it was really fun. And the fun is what made it stick. It was the most fun I ever had was making those songs. You couldn't even call them songs at the time. We were just recording things just to listen to them. And
it's funny that you said the microphone and like just the shitty setup. It reminded me right away. My first CD that I ever recorded was a group project. And we recorded it over half at Lucas James' house. He's the guy that was in the group with me. And then the other half we did at my friend Benny the Ball's house. I don't know if you know him or not. And we took a microphone, like a handheld microphone that you would use on a stage. And not a good one either. Like an old karaoke piece of crap. And then... what we did was we somehow had it rigged so that it was hanging from the ceiling, from the cord, and then we put a sock over it for like a pop stopper.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it was like swinging around like a punching bag or something. And we just tried to rap into that. It was good times.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've seen similar setups before. I think back to some of those early setups, and I just laugh. I mean, the setup I have for my podcast right now that I just up and bought the whole thing all at once. I mean, I literally in 2009 would have killed to have this setup. You know what I mean? It was a dream setup, and now it's just something that I could go on Amazon and put together in 40 minutes and have in 2 days with Amazon Prime. You know what I mean?
But everybody's got to start somewhere, right? I mean, humble beginnings, you know, humble beginnings.
I love it though. I mean, it sort of defines who we are, especially being Upers up here in the UP.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole place started with people doing fur trapping and then mining and so on and so forth, and all the way up until today. You know, I think we have some of the most humble beginnings there could be.
When you so you were kind of recording around with your buddies. Did you go away to NMU shortly after that, or was there a little bit of a scene where you did any shows or put out a CD in your local area before you moved to Marquette? Or talk about that transition as well.
Yeah, we had to create the scene. I grew up in Bessemer, which is right next to Ironwood and Hurley. Hurley's got a huge bar scene. It's pretty epic, nationwide. But I was going to go give it community college at the time in Ironwood, and that's where I met a guy. His name was Al Fashbaugh. He went by the name Moonlight Grammar, and we met in school at a party. Some mutual friends introduced us. Like I just made beats at the time when we first met. I didn't even rap yet. I mean, I was rapping privately, but I wasn't being a rapper. I was only making beats. So somebody was like, "Hey, this guy makes beats. Hey, this guy raps. You guys should be friends." And we basically became best friends from the second we met. And we started sitting down, and I came with beats, and he'd spit rhymes. And then I brought a notebook one day, like, "Hey, I write too, but check some of these out. These are the rhymes that I envisioned for these beats, you know, so just hear what I'm going for and then come up with your own thing." Well, then I would spit my thing, and he'd be like, "Hey, that's dope. You should do this." So we started a rap group in college. It was called Thought Sound.
Nice.
And we performed with each other. I mean, we were together for probably 2 or 3 years. Eventually, I stayed in the UP. He went to Minneapolis and did his thing, so it didn't really make sense for us to be in a rap group anymore.
Sure.
So we both went solo, and we were best friends for years and years, up until the 2016 election, because the guy I told you that I lost as a friend earlier, that's the guy. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's crazy how it all works, but that'll figure itself out sooner or later.
Sure,
it's
of
just,
course, yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't have any doubt about that.
Were you releasing any kind of album or mixtape or anything? Were you just recording for fun and posting them up on MySpace? And did you do any shows while you were there?
Yeah, it was mostly MySpace, and then we did the classic burn the CDs and write your group name in a Sharpie on them.
Yeah.
You know, we did that whole deal and gave them away and tried to sell them and mostly gave them away, you know, and a lot of MySpace. And we played quite a few shows. Like I said, we were the first ones to ever do that over there, similar to yourself here in Escanaba, I would assume. So we probably did exactly what you did. We just found some bars that didn't have anything going on a Wednesday night. You know, they would just let us do it. At first, they would just let us do it, and we would fund it all. And then eventually we got paid a little bit, and then we brought in out-of-town people. That's when... back then, remember Detta and Signs owns Zuper shirts. He's one of my sponsors on the podcast. That's when I first met those guys, because they were doing the rap thing back then too. And like, what's that?
Cheap plug, by the way.
Cheap sponsored plug, yeah. I forgot we're on your podcast.
No, that's great. I love it. That's awesome.
You can't teach that, man.
Yeah, no, I love Uber shirts. I wear their shit too, so yeah.
It's awesome. But so they would come over to Hurley, and you know, we'd tell the bar like, "Hey, we're gonna do this one a little bit bigger. We're gonna have some people from Marquette come. You know, will you pay for their hotel and gas?" And you know, they'd flip them $200-300 or whatever to come over, and we wouldn't take any money because we were at home and we just wanted to drink our faces off. So we'd get free tap beer for the night and get way too drunk and have a awesome time, and that made it worth it at the time. At that time, when you're 21, freshly 21, newly a rapper, and you're playing these shows in front of like everybody you grew up with, and sometimes like just being able to drink all you want for free all night is more than enough because of the experience and the memories I created at the time. You know what I mean? Those were some of the best times of my entire life.
You're not thinking like a businessman about it. You're not thinking, how
right.
can I make money off of this? I mean, you'll put your CDs up for sale or whatever, but I mean, at the end of the day, you're there to just kind of get your name out, have some fun, and discover yourself, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we did most of that stuff for free, man.
Mm-hmm. How did you end up crossing over into Marquette then? Did you go to school at NMU after the community college, or did you get mixed in with that crowd because of Symes and Data?
No, it's actually pretty interesting. Like I said, I was going to Gogebic Community College at the time. I was a graphic design intern, or a graphic design major, just learning graphic design. And while I was there, I would do some freelance free work for like the casino and some other places making their advertisements. And like it was 5 days into one of the summer vacations, and I was working at a gas station. I was working at Citgo over in Bessemer, and somebody I knew from partying back in the day showed up, and he was wearing a suit. And I'm like, man, we used to get drunk and throw up together, and now you're wearing a suit. Like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm an advertising executive at the newspaper. And he gave me his card, and sure enough, it said his name, advertising executive. And I was like, oh man, this is dope. And he goes, oh, well, we're hiring right now. He's like, you should come in and put an application in. You'd be perfect. And I went in, I put in an application, and I sold advertisements at various media outlets for the next 7 years. So I started out at the Ironwood Daily Globe. Then I went to the Minneapolis Downtown Journal and got to hang out with all my rap buddies down in the Twin Cities. Eventually came back after a short time, went back to the Daily Globe for a little bit. They hired my mom to be the director of advertising, so my mother was now my boss. So I had to go. Yeah. So I had to go. So from there, I moved to Marquette on a whim. I got there the first day. I showed up to TV6 in a suit, like, hey, I just got here today. I'm looking for work. TV6 basically hired me on the spot, and I worked for them. And while I was there, I used those connections in hip hop and basically met everybody doing rap in Marquette, and had probably another one of the most epic summers of my life.
I respect that about you, that you show up at a business like that with a suit on. I mean, I completely understand the mentality of it, and I would be that person myself if I could do that myself. Mm-hmm. I've got so much respect for that type of mentality to just go out and get it and throw on the suit and just look the part, you know? But
yeah, man,
that's awesome.
My dad used to have that corny dad saying that, you dress for the job you want, not the job you're trying to get.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I want, man. I want to be the CEO of something, so that's what I dress for, no matter what I'm doing.
That's me too, man. And, you're a little bit further along in that process than I am. I'm still trying to find, I just... Similar to like you said, I always felt like I'm destined for something bigger. I want to run something. I have 1,000,001 different ideas or directions I could go in. I have a proven background and experience in running things. Yeah. It's like I could go apply for a job, and it's like you look at the concerts that we promoted, or like the wrestling shows even more, because there's so many people that are a part of that show. You're managing 25 people on a show. You're managing the budget for it. I mean, all that stuff is invaluable experience, but I'm just, not the suit and tie kind of guy to just show up, and I should be, but I respect the hell out of that about you.
Well, no, I mean, it's all in perspective, but I'm glad you said that. Do you ever feel like, I feel like we're sort of on the same level right now. Do you ever feel like you still feel like you're destined for something, and there's something you want, but you have no idea what it is?
Yep, absolutely.
Because I feel like that every single day. Like, I know I'm trying to do something huge, but right now I have no idea what that is.
Maybe that's part of it, though. That's the life's journey. you know?
I feel like it probably is, yeah.
Yeah, just learning and growing and experiencing and finding your way to it's about the journey to the destination, not the destination, you know?
Yeah, you got to try things, man.
Yeah, hell yeah, and you certainly do. So you said you had one of the best summers of your life. You got mixed up with the hip hop crowd there. Keeping on the hip hop topic, was that the point that you got intermixed with the rappers that were up there? And let's drop some names. Who was around at that time? Were you working with Symes? Were you working with Detta? Were you working with, the Lymans and the Codemans? And who were you clicking up with when you were there?
Well, I mean, I was tight with everybody. I knew everybody. I actually didn't do much as far as making any music with any of those guys.
MC Twat, too. Shout out to him. I forgot.
Shout out. Yeah. It goes by Gurko now. But, like a month before I moved to Marquette, before I didn't even know I was moving to Marquette at the time, that's when rappers were real big on doing collabs on Facebook.
Yeah.
So that's when I met the Marquette Finest dudes. I met them on Facebook. Just, I think Reverb Nation was hot at the time. Remember that? I think that's still sort of around. Do you? Nice. Yeah. I'm probably on there somewhere, but I'm probably pretty low right now.
Reverb.com/thesheep13. Check it out.
Nice. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So checking out the UP charts at the time, Marquette's Finest was on there, and I reached out to Dubs and JD and Tori and T10, and we ended up making a song together via the internet. I made a beat, I emailed it to them, they recorded, they sent it back with my open verse, I recorded mine, and we put it out online. Little did I know, a month later I'd be living in Marquette, and those were like the first guys I hit up, like, hey, we just did a song together, what's up? They had a studio in their basement. They all lived together. They were all roommates. So I started hanging out with those guys like immediately. And like, to be perfectly honest, man, I like dated this chick for 7 years, from like 17 to 24. And then another one immediately, like one day after, for a whole other year. So I was like going through some things at the time. Like both of those things ended really badly, like your classic bad breakups. We don't even need to get into that, but so I showed up to Marquette like with a chip on my shoulder, like, man, what the heck just happened? These last 8 years are crazy. So I like went up to Marquette with like the sole purpose of like sowing my wild oats and having an amazing time. So I met these guys, and they were all younger than me. I was like 28 at the time, and they were all still in college. Yeah. So I started hanging out with these guys, and then all of a sudden I find myself going to these college parties and on the college scene and doing all this. And I don't think most people at the time had any idea that I was an advertising executive at TV6. They all thought I was in college because I was hanging out with these college kids all the time,
Yeah, and me included, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I was hanging out with Dubs, JD, who's the sports director at ABC3 now.
Yeah.
T10, I think he's a chef at the prison up there. Dubs is in Marquette. But yeah, man, we hung out with all those guys. Detta and Sans were doing big things. Codeman and all those guys. I met ER. Because he was working with Codeman. So, so we got really tight with the Team What's Good guys. Those are some of my favorite guys, like, in the world. And to this day, ER does the exit song on my podcast, like, on every single episode from its beginning. So I'm still tight with those guys, Yeah. So it's been cool. I mean, I've met some of the coolest people ever. So I still run into those guys. Now I'm doing my thing with the marketing, and I run a website called escanabanow.com. It's the UP's first all digital news site. And so I cover all of the high school sports in Escanaba. So I'm always on the sidelines at the football games taking pictures. And JD from Marquette's Finest, he does sports for one of the TV stations in Marquette. So we always bump into each other at these high school sports and basketball games. And it's like, man, we've come a long way since those days,
Moving on up. He looks good good in a suit too, by the way. I see.
Yeah, he's doing it too, hey?
On Facebook.
Yeah, nice.
How did me and you end up getting... Do you remember what show specifically? I can't pinpoint an exact show that I remember meeting you. I just kind of remember you just intergrouped with the rest of the Marquette kids when we just started clicking up and doing shows with them, and it was just... I
Yeah,
always thought you were always one of my favorite ones out of all of them. I think just me and Dusty were both just big fans of you, and I always
thanks,
wanted to have
man.
you on shows and stuff like that. Do you remember?
Yeah, well, I think we connected because of our mutual taste for like Minneapolis hip hop, Atmosphere, Brother Ali. You know,
Yeah.
the first show I ever played in Escanaba was at Barron's.
Okay.
So I believe you guys threw, wasn't there like a freestyle battle session and a show that night at Barron's? You guys threw that one, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that was the first one I ever came, which was super funny because we drove down from Marquette that night, and right when I moved to Marquette, I started dating this chick that I met in my hometown. Well, I moved to Marquette and she moved to Escanaba the same week. So that first night we did that show at Barron's, I came here early and I had dinner with her parents. And I had to meet this girlfriend's parents that first night we played that show at Barron's.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, that she's my wife now.
Yeah.
and they still live at that same house here in Escanaba.
I always thought that was cool too, because I do remember meeting her with you at one of the shows, and you ended up getting married and everything. That's awesome. Kid and all that good stuff.
The whole thing, man. Yeah.
Heck yeah, man. Awesome. All right. So, I mean, at some point you transitioned out of the music, started doing other things. When did you start your business, and what was kind of the thought process behind that, and how did you go about getting it up and running?
I started my business in 2014, and the reason I started that is because I literally had an epiphany that I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. Same thing like we talked about a minute ago. I know there's things I want to do, and a lot of them I don't even know what they are yet. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, some of them aren't even invented yet. I mean, 3 years ago, Facebook Live wasn't invented yet. Yet right now, that's a huge part of my business. So I'm pretty aware of a lot of what I'm going to do is in the future and not even here yet. So I got into digital marketing because of podcasts. I mean, I was following these guys like Gary Vaynerchuk, Tim Ferriss, and Grant Cardone and Ty Lopez and some of these kind of names.
Grant Cardone.
Dude, yeah, he's good, man.
10x, man, 10x.
Yeah, you watch his Snapchats?
No, I don't have Snapchat. I'm completely Snapchat illiterate.
Okay, he's a good Snapchat. He's on Instagram. I can
imagine. He doesn't pull any punches.
Yeah, he does a lot from his house, too, and he's got a dope house in Miami. But yeah, man, I mean, I really got into podcasting, and I got into marketing hugely because of that. So I started learning about all these new techniques in marketing, telling stories and, doing things on a local level. And I sort of identified with the new philosophy that every human is their own marketing company these days. We're our own media agencies. Yeah. And I really got into the fact that we can just act like that. So I started helping out, local businesses here in Escanaba. I help out the Country Club, Crispina's, Andy's Diner, Chamber of Commerce, a whole bunch of other ones. And it's been really, really cool because these people hire me to run their social media, but they hire me on the notion that I'm going to do something different and it's not going to be like anything else. I mean, a lot of these places spent 50 years putting ads in the newspaper, where nowadays that will get you like a half of a 1% of ROI, Yeah, so it's super fun because I just get, literally my job is to create attention for people now. That's literally when people ask me, what do you do? It's like, technically I create attention. So I just help businesses get attention. And there's so many awesome things you could do now. It's almost become too easy. But the reason I'm able to do that is because most businesses fall under two categories here in the UP. Either they understand what they should be doing, but they literally just don't have the time to do it themselves, and they don't trust their minimum wage employees to do it for them. Or they're older and have no idea what they should be doing. So, I mean, those two categories are my bread and butter, man.
Do you do a lot of the completely write and design a lot of the advertising campaigns, or do you kind of just carry out instructions from them? Maybe a little mix of both. How much of a creative input do you have on some of these businesses?
I mean, sometimes I'll outsource some things. Like if somebody needs a whole website, I'll send that to somebody else just because I know how to do it. I just don't have the time to design
Sure,
an entire
yeah.
website, you know. So
Tedious
a lot,
bullshit.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So I mean, a lot of what I do is strategy, you know. But as far as the creative, I do almost all of it myself. I mean, I pitch ideas. They say, "Yeah, that sounds cool. I've never heard that before. Let's do it." So, I mean, I do everything from copywriting and ad copy to Facebook ads. I'm certified by Google in analytics and AdWords, so I can run AdWords campaigns both in search and display advertising. We do a lot of Facebook Live. I create promotional videos. Right now, my number one thing that I'm doing right now is creating simple 2 to 4 minute Facebook videos for people, because those are so impactful, because people will watch them on their phone while they're standing in line at the grocery store. And it's never been easier to reach ideal consumers with, you make a really awesome video and you use Facebook ads and target it at your ideal consumer, and you can guarantee you're going to hit people's target audience, and it's awesome.
You know who's one local business that I see a lot of the stuff that they create is that I like because it's locally owned is Elmer's County Market with Mikey D's crazy pirate deals and stuff.
They do a great
I
job. Every
love
time I'm
that
there and I
stuff,
see them,
man.
I give them props on that.
And it gets them the attention, and it's outside the box, kind of like what you
It
were
does
talking
too.
about.
It does. Myers just opened, and I was talking to one of their marketing executives at their grand opening yesterday, and we were talking about what some of the other grocery stores are doing. And I'm like, hey, I hope you guys have a good, unique social media strategy, because Myers puts out those videos with, or Elmer's puts out those videos with Mikey D acting like the pirate,
Yeah.
and they get like 4,000 views a piece. It'd
Yep.
be like 2 to 4,000 views, which is awesome for a town of this size.
Yeah, and it's built around advertising the different deals and stuff that they have. Are
Yeah,
you? What are your thoughts on? And we're getting. I mean, people that don't live in the UP or Escanaba are going to be super like, I don't give a shit about this at this point. But I'm curious. What are your thoughts on Meyer coming to the town? It's the first Meyer in the UP, first of three I think that they're gonna do. What are your thoughts on that coming to town? I mean, Super One shut down almost right away after before Meyer was even open. They shut their doors. How do you
yeah.
feel like Meyer's not quite as corporate as like a Walmart? They're still local state Michigan. They're in the upper Midwest area, but it's still kind of Big Brother moving in on the little guys. What are your thoughts on all that? Who do you think stands to survive? What are your thoughts on big business, small business? It's a lot I threw at you, but kind of
No,
go
no,
from there.
it's cool, man. I get it. I think as far as any of the big box stores moving into town, Myers is definitely the best option. Because, like you said, they are from Michigan. They are community friendly. The first thing that they did yesterday was they gave a speech, and they immediately gave $25,000 to the UP State Fair Authority Board, and they gave $25,000 to the Escanaba School District.
Whoa!
First thing they did on day one.
Wow!
So that's all got a lot to say of their impact on the community.
Yeah.
So I think as far as these big businesses coming here, it's the best option. They're not going to cut anyone's throats. And honestly, I think Super One needed to go. They needed to invest a lot of money, or they needed to compete with 5 other grocery stores, because now we had, they were already competing with Walmart, Elmer's, but now Myers is here. Aldi has a sign out front right now.
Yeah.
They're opening in this fall. They already opened. So that's 5 grocery stores. I mean, how many do we need? Elmer's just redid their entire interior of their store, which means that Super One would have had to redo their entire store to be able to compete. And if they're not in position to do that, then it was best for them to pull a plug as far as a corporate, financial standpoint.
Elmer's
So
can hang, man.
I think Elmer's is going to be cool.
They've been rolling with the punches on this, and they sweat it too. I got a buddy who's has been working in the meat department there for years and years and years. And he says,
Yep.
they worry about that kind of stuff, especially Meijer has a fresh meat department. It's not trucked in frozen shit like Walmart has. They
Right.
have fresh meats, and I remember he said that they drove all the way like out of state to visit a Meijer to see what the competition was like, and they sweat it, they do, but they roll with the punches and they continue to survive.
Yeah, I mean, competition, creates great things, and it always has. I think Elmer's is going to be just fine because Elmer's has the support of the community.
Yes.
The Dajanoff family is huge here. Myers does amazing things for the community as a whole. Or Elmer's, excuse me. But I think if anyone needs to worry, it's Walmart, because Walmart has got a bad rap over the last handful of years. I mean, I dread going to that place for anything. I think Myers is going to impact Walmart more than it impacts Elmer's.
I've always said Walmart is like government, like the government grocery store. It's like government run. It's like when you go to the DMV and it's just poorly run. The people that work there have bad attitudes. They don't give a shit. They're paid nothing. They're understaffed. It's a hellhole to be in. And Walmart's kind of like that. Everything's cheap, but it's crap. I'll still shop there from time to time. Don't get me wrong, but I mean,
right.
And then they have like 12 lanes, and there's two of them open at all times. At least that's how it is down here. It's just hell. I've always had that opinion of them. Meijer's kind of the opposite. I mean, they're the same kind of store, but they're fancier and more just better quality in general.
Right.
What? How do you feel about, do you feel like you're a part of the community at this point, and what are some of your goals? I know when you were talking with Andy and kind of piggybacking off the local businesses, you guys were kind of talking about how there seems to be a trend that's swinging from the big corporate companies to more local again, and I know you and Andy were talking a lot about, and he's on the board there, where this is, kind of a goal is to try to reinvigorate the local community and the mom and pops. And how do you see the plans for that and the future for that and your part in it, being part of the community?
I definitely feel a part of the community right now. I mean, it's been funny. You got me on Facebook. Do you see how much I've been in the local news the last couple of days? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just, I've been all over that thing, but it's just because I just do things, there's things going on, and I'm just making sure I'm there and I'm talking to people. And, when I moved to Escanaba, the day I moved here, the only other time I was here was that 3 or 4 hours I came for that show at Barrett's.
Right.
So, she was my girlfriend at the time, eventually became my wife. She's like, hey, my aunt owns a restaurant. She wants me to come work for her. You want to move to Escanaba? And at the time, I was in a position where I could. So I said, yeah. We moved, a day or two later, and I've been here ever since, and it has become my home very, very quickly. And I've been here since 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. And for the first 2 or 3 years, I didn't really try to become a part of the community. I had spent a majority of my life in my hometown, where you can go, you can't go to Walmart without running into 10 people. And I really enjoyed the fact that for the first time in my life, I was somewhere that felt like home, but nobody knew me. So I sort of flew under the radar for a long time because I enjoyed that. But then as I got older, I got married and had a son, and my personal goals became more important by the day. So I started getting involved in more things, I'm in Upper Edge, and like we talked about earlier, the Masons, and I do marketing here at the Chamber of Commerce. I go to all the business after hours, so I'm trying to be an impactful member of the community. I just want to help, and I want to help the place grow. And I think right now our age group is a crucial demographic for the future of the city, because there's a pretty large group of people right around my age right now that are doing some pretty awesome things in this town, and they all have the future of the city in mind. So, we're modernizing fast, we're diving into the future quicker than we ever have before, and somebody has to step up and be at the forefront of that and help guide it, because the people that are running the city government right now, are whether they're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they're not going to be there forever, and somebody has to take over. So I think it's important for people in their 20s and 30s to be aware of that and start taking steps now to learn things they need to learn to step into some of those positions as they come about. It's funny that you asked me what my plans are, and I haven't spoke of this publicly at all yet, but over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking with my wife and some friends, and there are 3 city council seats open this November's election, and I'm currently debating with myself and talking to my wife about the possibility of running for city council this fall.
Wow. And it's so crazy too, because it, just like, and it might sound weird for me to say this, and maybe it's just because, I don't know, maybe you can help shed some more light on this of why, but it's crazy. It's like you, and then Andy just being the local businessman that he is, Andy Crispinia's restaurant, Andy's Diner, sitting on the board over there. Phil, what he's doing, being the prosecutor there. And it's
he's on Bay College's board too.
He's on Bay College's board, and it almost, to me, it seems like you guys like infiltrated it. You know what I mean? It's like you guys are regular people like me. And that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's just because we're the same age range, came up in the same area, came up together a little bit, doing some of the different things, us with the rapping, me with them at school. But maybe it's just like, hey, I know these people are real people that are cool people, and they're moving into positions of power in the city, and they are going to eventually be the future of this city, this town, and they have that in their hands, and it's a cool thing,
Yeah, I just think it's important to realize that somebody has to be in those positions. So we either take action and accept some of these positions and go after them with the goal of doing what's best for the city, or we sit back and let other people take these positions and let them make the decisions and then complain. But you're as aware of the situation as I am, where people with our age, in our age group, are still not really aware that we can just up and do these things, but we can. I mean, there's people like state rep in Michigan, Bo LaFave. He's 24 and he just won a race as the state representative of Michigan. He's in Lansing in the House chambers as a 24-year-old, and he's from Iron Mountain, and that's amazing that these things could be done. And to be honest, it's inspiring. So, the future is going to come one way or another, whether we want to fight it or not. Either way, it's coming. Somebody has to take leadership positions, and the people in these leadership positions are going to be making decisions that are going to impact the future of the city. They're going to impact our children and future generations who grow here. So it's like, do we want to let other people make those decisions, or do we want to become involved and have a hand in it? And I'm under the impression of if I'm going to be here, I want to be an impact to this community. So what can I do to do that? Well, right now I'm making silly Facebook videos and helping people with their social media, but I'm making a name for myself. People know who I am. People are it's my podcast is helping. People are getting to know me as a person through my podcast because I have conversations like this. I'm very open. I tell my opinions, and if I don't know something, I'll be the first one to say, I don't know anything about that, but tell me about it. I want to learn. And I think that's how we all should be. So, I'm open to the possibilities of stepping into some leadership positions. As of right now, I don't know that I'm going to do that, or maybe necessarily that this is the election, or maybe I may spend the summer campaigning for city council. I don't really know yet. I got a few more conversations to have with some people about that, but anything's possible, man. And there's a lot of people in our age group, and I guarantee that if one or two of us in that 25 to 35 age group go out and start talking to other people in our age group and say, hey, I'm you, I'm one of you, what do we want to get done? Well, one of us has to step up and take that position, and what do we want? So I kind of don't have a problem being the voice of our generation.
Well, with that said, it's about a good time to wrap it up here. I don't think it gets much more poetic than that, really. I want to end it just by saying, like I said earlier, man, I got a lot of respect for you. Everything that you do,
Thank you.
I think it's cool as hell. I love how you are a podcaster as well, because I'm the only other person you're the only other person I know that does it.
Yeah,
and,
you too, man.
Just back in the old rap days, had fun doing that. I just, like I said, you were always one of my favorite rappers to have around too, and just hang with.
Thank
and
you.
Have some beers. So yeah, it was a good conversation. I'm glad you took the time to be a part of it, and I was,
absolutely
did yours. And any other plugs? I mean, go ahead. I know you got a million things. Go ahead and rattle them all off.
Well, me, man, I got a lot going on. Well, I got my podcast, Sore Joints and Twitches podcast. It's on iTunes. You could also find it on sorejointsandtwitches.com. I'm on all social media at Jake Syreini 906, JakeSyreini 906. I document like my entire life on social media. So whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, if I'm up to something cool, it's going to be on there. I mean, I had about 170 Snapchats on Wednesday of me exploring Washington, D.C., so it gets pretty interesting on there. Other than that, man, I'm just helping out. I'm doing all the marketing for the state fair this year and some things like that. There's always a lot going on. It's just my big thing is anyone in the UP that wants to do something, honestly, I'm always here to have conversations, shed some advice. I mean, if somebody wants to do something and they're not sure about it, and you need somebody to talk to that'll just give you an honest opinion, like, one of my goals is to be that kind of go-to guy. So if anyone wants to run for office or try to get a job or create a business and you need somebody to talk to, anybody hit me up. It's all social media at Jake Syreini 906.
All right, man. Well, it was good talking to you. That was the Underground Sound again, the podcast for your mom's ass. Jake Syreini, Jake James. Thanks for being on the show, man. Take her easy.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Later.
Peace.